We'll be going back to Moab soon, and since it's a pain fiddling with walkie-talkies, I installed a GMRS radio in my Jeep. I went with the Midland MXT275 kit with the Ghost antenna. It's not the newest or most powerful model, but it does have all the controls on the handset, and it doesn't need to be charged every night like a handheld. Then, my Jeep went in the shop to get a new frame. I'm not sure if we'll have it back in time for the trip, so I got the same kit for Ricky's Jeep, and this is the install. A couple of days earlier, I'd tapped this hole in the roll bar. You don't have to drill, it's already the right size for a 3/8 inch coarse thread bolt. Then, using some scrap steel left over from the bumper mod, I cut a piece off that was 1 1/4 inch wide by 6 inches long. After filing the edges smooth, I drilled 2 3/8 inch holes. The first 5/8 inch from the end. On the opposite end, 1 inch. I also drilled 2 smaller 3/16 inch holes in the middle to run a zip tie through. Then I used a metal brake to put a bend in it. I don't remember the angle. I think it's around 40 degrees, but the goal is to make the antenna level. The burrs got removed with a couple of small files, and then I used acetone and a Brillo pad to scrub any oil or surface rust off. I used 3 coats of self-etching primer I had left over for my skid plate paint job. That was followed by 4 coats of black paint I had from the bumper shop. 2 days later, I started the install. I took the doors off because I was going to be in and out of the cab and I didn't want them in the way. Y'all know how to take the doors off. I'll be mounting the radio under the front passenger seat, so I also took that out. The seat bolts use a T50 Torx bit, and I found that a couple of extensions help get the ratchet above the seat. After removing the seat bolts, lean the seat back forwards, then tilt the whole thing backwards so you can get underneath the seat. You'll need to separate 2 connectors and pull the Christmas trees out that hold the wires to the seat bottom. The front kick panel and door sill trim comes out next. After unsnapping the door's electrical connector, there's a single 10mm stamped steel nut you have to remove. With those off, you can just pull to the inside of the Jeep and the trim piece will come free. I installed the tow package on this Jeep after we bought it. Because of that, the interior pigtail for the aux switches is under the kick panel instead of up behind the glove box where they normally are. Once the front piece is out, you can move to the back door and pull out the rear door sill. It's only one piece that goes from the back to a little bit forwards of the B-pillar. There are 2 plastic panels that protect the wiring. They have 10mm nuts holding them down and can be separated from the bottoms with a small trim removal tool. Moving to the back, use the trim removal tool again to open the covers on the passenger side tie-downs, and use a T40 Torx to remove the tie-downs altogether. Pull out the big floor piece, the side piece you just unbolted, and the cover that hides the factory jack. There is 1 T25 Torx screw in the front of the side panel, then the rest of the panel just pops off. Before you take off running with the thing, make sure you disconnect your subwoofer wire. The last trim pieces to come off are on the roll bar. The bottom one has 2 more T25's Torx screws. It's hooked under another trim piece at the top, but it'll pull out enough to run the antenna wire. The smaller top one just pulls out. The radio will be mounted under the seat, so I just need to put a small loop in the antenna wire and then zip tie it along the factory wiring towards the back, under the door sills, up along the inside of the wheel well until I get to the roll bar. Now is a good time to bolt the bracket to the roll bar and attach the antenna base. For all the radio aficionados out there, I know I don't have a ground plane. I'm not terribly concerned with range, but at some point I might try one of these Nagoya ground plane kits just to see how it does. My small round file came in handy to make rounded, cable-size holes in the trim pieces. Finally, I zip tie the antenna cable down the roll bar and coil up the extra down low behind the rear panel. Use the trim tool to take off the little cover at the rear of the console. Then take out the 10mm bolts so you can get your hands up in there. There's a rubber mat at the bottom of the center console. With that out, a 1/2 inch drill bit makes a hole just barely big enough for the RJ45 connector. If you think you might need to pull the cable out, you should make the hole a little bit bigger. Poke through the RJ45 connector, then fish it out from the bottom. Pull all the extra cable you want through, then roll it up and slap a zip tie on it to keep things organized. After cutting an L shape in the rubber mat, I reinstalled that and it mostly covers the hole in the bottom. I left about a foot of the handset extension hanging out. I was talking to a buddy the other day about extending the power wires and learned that the internet is divided. Imagine that. About soldering versus crimp connectors. On one hand, I think automakers did start using them because they're cheap and harder to screw up. On the other hand, NASA will spend $600 on a titanium screwdriver. If they say crimp connectors are more vibration resistant, I'm not going to argue because their shit vibrates. Anyway, I didn't learn about that until after I'd soldered these up, so maybe next time. Whether you solder or crimp, I think it's good practice to offset the splices. After the solder cooled, I use heat shrink tubing. If you do the same, make sure you put the tubing on before you solder. Repeat the process to splice the red positive to the aux lead. I did have to use a crimp-on ring terminal for the ground and used the conveniently located bottom ground post, which has a 10mm nut. The forward wire tray is a little son of a gun to open. I don't know that you have to run the wires in it, but if you do, it helps to remove the two 10mm nuts first. Then the trim removal tool can be used to open it up. Zip ties are used again to keep the power and ground wires snug to the factory wire bundle. Mount may not be the right word for what I did. Using the bracket as a guide, I marked 6 spots on the carpet with a paint pen. Then I used a razor to cut small slits. Zip ties went in the outer holes and up the middle holes and through the middle of the bracket. Zip ties pulled tight and the radio inserted. The thing weighs like 6 ounces, so I'm sure it'll be fine. After snapping the radio into the bracket, attach the antenna cable, handset, and power connectors. Reassembly is the reverse of the install, but you might want to test that everything works before closing things up. I put things back together as I went because I like to live on the edge. If it's your first time taking out the interior, it is helpful when removing things to organize them so that the last thing you put down will be the first thing you grab when it goes back together. And don't forget to reconnect the wires under the seat. With it all back together, the first order of business is setting the aux switch to battery. That way I can mess with the radio without the engine running. I'll change it back to ignition when I'm done. And look at that, it works. The first things I need to do is disable key press beeps, enable the Roger tone, and set audio to come from both the handset and radio speakers. Oh, and it should go without saying, change the background to red. Anyway, hopefully somebody finds this video helpful, and be on the lookout for some Moab content in about a month. Take care.